Hello YouTube, welcome back to another video. In today's video or project, we're going to start a two-part project. The first one will be on REST API calls. I know in previously talked about API calls. Those were Motion Canvas API internal library calls. This we're going to be talking about REST or representational state transfer. It's hard to pronounce sometimes, but also normally called also as REST or RESTful. Essentially, you're taking internet from somewhere else, or you're taking data from somewhere else in the internet or another server or another computer, and you're utilizing it in your own application. And it is how a large chunk, if not the majority, of the internet works today. And we get to use it in our Motion Canvas projects. So that is what we're going to be talking about. And in the video after this, we're going to be actually using the knowledge we've gained from this tutorial in the future ones. So to start off with, like any Motion Canvas project, we want to go npm init at Motion Canvas latest. And for our project name, we're just going to call it API, use TypeScript, use both, and then we can go into CD API. For those wondering, I am going to use Node version 20.17.0. And then, so we've CD'd in. We can do code dot if you're using VS Code to open this up. Otherwise, that you can open up however you want in your IDE. I'm going to actually move this to the right side, move that to the left side. I'm going to go over here, you open up a new terminal. I'm not going to start it though, because we're going to be making some changes first before we actually start. So I can open up source. I can change source project, change this example to be API, change this to be API, change this to be API. That references this file. And we need to change this to API. Okay, now VS Code likes to show this JSX error. I can just go quick fix and update my TS configs file, and that typically fixes that. Cannot find that. Oh, the reason why we can't find that is because we missed the npm install command. We just CD'd into the directory without installing anything. So let's install those packages real quick. Okay, we installed those. Everything is good. And I think we can ignore that file, that error. It should still work. And if we go to npm start, I should be able to go to localhost 90, and we can see our beginner animation. I'm going to give ourselves a background, and to make it white, we're going to take this and drag this all the way over to 1, so you just see an RGB 255, 255, 255. And now we can see our white animation. And we can see our ball growing and shrinking. So next, when making API calls or REST API calls, there are two typical ways to do it within Node.js or in Motion Canvas. The first is using fetch. The second is using Axios. There are two different modules that we can use. There is technically a third way, using Node.js's built-in functionality, but these two modules make our lives a lot easier when dealing with REST APIs. And so to install Axios, I'm going to do Control-C to break out of this. And I'm going to go npm I Axios. And if you go to package.json, you should see Axios right there. And then we can do npm start again to start it back up. And from there, we will modify our code. So up here, we can get rid of circle and add code, and get rid of core. And we're just going to create a simple scene using our code block. So view.add code, and then down here I can just that. Okay, and then we want to do code equals hello world. Now, why are we using a code block instead of a text? You can use both, but since we're dealing with APIs, typically you use that with code. Now, we can't see our object. The reason why we can't see our object is by default the code is white, or our text is white. So we need to change the color to something that we can see. So let's say black, and there we are. We can also change the font size if we wanted to. And just as a randomer, I'm picking 15, made it smaller. I can comment this out, make it a little bit bigger if we want. But I'm going to keep it small because I know we're going to have larger text appear. Okay, and so making good progress so far. And now for the API calls, like I mentioned, we have Axios and fetch. So typically with Axios, we need to import it. So import Axios from Axios. And if you want to learn more about Axios, you can go to axios-http.com, click Getting Started, and you can learn all the stuff you ever wanted to learn about Axios. And then with fetch, you can go to this page to learn all the things you wanted to learn about fetch. If you wanted to follow along, you can go to my site, Tomco Tech, Project, API calls, and you can follow along in this tutorial along with me. Either watch the video first, or you can go through the tutorial to see what we're all going to be doing. So to add, back to adding Axios, we can go const response equals, doing this in the wrong place actually. So with this we can go const response equals, normally with Axios, I'm used to doing async await calls. So we can go await Axios.get, and this is what you'll see in most tutorials if you go online. And then you can have something else. Now you see here that await can only be done within async functions. And if we go async, it'll work kind of. And now we need to know what kind of API call to make. There is a great, or what thing to call. So there is JSON holder. You can make free REST calls. And it's really, really cool. One of the things we can do is go to posts. And by making a call to this page, you can get this kind of information. So we're just going to copy this and making a post. Go back to our motion canvas stuff. And if I just take this and go data equals response.data. And if we take this and we plop it into here, nothing happens. Why did nothing happen? Does it? Okay, motion canvas just froze. Well, that's no good. Why did motion canvas freeze? It's supposed to be simple. So I have messed with the wait and async millions of times. You cannot use await async in makescene2D because makescene2D is required for motion canvas to run. If you turn it into an asynchronous function, you're going to break the whole thing. So the way to get around that is by not doing that, of course. And normally with Vue, we're used to using the keyword yield because this is a generator function from one of my first videos. And so instead of await Axios, we have to yield Axios. So now if we run this again, I think it's still frozen. Let me close out of that. There we go. Oh, still got some more bugs. Size is undefined. Oh no, these are some weird bugs. Let's close all those out. And we still have some issues. So what we can do is instead of putting this here, we can try to make it a little bit smaller. Maybe I just want to try one object. Data 0. Nope, same thing. So fragments undefined, size is undefined, all your drawing info is all defined. What's going on is code is expecting a string. We're not returning string, we're returning an object. So the way to get around that is stringify. Then you take your data and you plop it in there. And now we get our white screen back. The fact that we're getting a black screen to begin with and we set the background to white is something that should have told us. And so now, where is it? We can't see it. So let's say if I just wanted one object. Okay. Still an issue. Still can't see it. I can try to go to root. Still nothing. So now we're still trying to troubleshoot. What is going on? Well, let's try to add some more items to stringify. Still nothing. Okay. Let's see. What is going on here? We got our code, makescene2D, makescene2D, Axios get response.data, data, JSON stringify. This should have gotten me what I wanted. but it didn't, which is strange. Apparently it had a hard time loading. But this is what we wanted. So it seems that when Motion Canvas is it added this information, it never realized that this loaded. This was still already just there, in this case nothing, because it wasn't loaded yet. Now that this stuff is loaded, it is doing the right orders of operations, and now it is loading this. So in the document that I wrote for this tutorial, the companion document here, I talked about me doing a little bit of troubleshooting. This is the troubleshooting I'm talking about, where sometimes if you do the API calls incorrectly, or you use await and async instead of using yield, you'll get into some errors, and then those errors may propagate into other things that you're doing, and things may fail unexpectedly. That's one of the joys of just doing this. There's not really a great tutorial outside of what I'm making now to do REST-based calls with Motion Canvas. So this is just something that we can do. And so then we took this and we put it inside of a stringify function, because code is expecting a string, not an object. It doesn't know how to process the object correctly. And just to show a small little chunk, we put 0. If we would to experiment a little bit, and let's not add those last 2 bits so I can explain what they do. Now I saved, it's 1 line. So null, so the first section of stringify is your content. Then your null says we don't want to have any options for there, and then we have 2, which means we want to have 2 tabs or 2 spaces. I think it's 2 spaces to add an indent. So that's what we need to do. If we want to see the whole object, we could do it like that, and it will try to do the best it can to center it 0, 0. It looks like it's a little off because some of the lines are longer than others. If we tried to center it and actually view it, you can do 0. Then since this is JSON that we're getting back, we can come back and go dot title, and now we can just see the title, and we can then display it however we want to. I can save this. I can go dot user ID, and now I can see a 1. If that's too small, I can go and change it to font size 115. Now I can see my 1. So that is some stuff that you can do with JSON using Axios. You can do the exact same thing with fetch, only we don't need Axios anymore. Instead of a yield axios.get, we can do a yield fetch to the same thing. Now with Axios, that response that you get back, you get everything back. With fetch, you have to actually yield to get your response back. The reason for it is with fetch, you're getting the headers and you're getting the start of the information, and it returns when you get the first headers back. If you don't know what headers are, don't worry. But when you get the first bit of information back, fetch will respond, versus Axios will respond when it gets everything back. There can be some performance reasons why one is better than the other. End result, you have to yield once again to wait for all your data to come back. And this time it's not data, you're actually looking for JSON. And like the last time, to prove that this is still the same thing, we can modify it. And there it goes. Typically with Motion Canvas, you can do put, paste, delete, not paste, but get, post, put, delete options had all these different types of REST verbs. I'll have another video series all about REST in the future. But typically with Motion Canvas, we just want to read information and then make animations based on the information that we read. So you almost always want to make a get call. That's why it was axios.get, not axios.post. If I'm going too much in the weeds, let me know. That's typically what you'll want. And as a reminder, you can see both results right here, one for Axios, one for fetch. And as it says on the bottom of the page, congratulations, you now have created a working REST API with Motion Canvas. In the next project, we'll expand upon these concepts. So there are some other APIs that we can utilize, such as weather APIs, YouTube APIs. If you wanted to have some information, for example, here's a good example that you could use to expand upon this on your own if you wish. You could go out there using, let's say, Node.js or other applications and put together a JSON list or an array, and you could, let's say, if you're into cryptocurrency, the price of Bitcoin over time, or the number of subscribers a YouTuber has over time, you could return back a JSON output that is like that, make it your own little API or whatever, and then with a database and so on, and then use Motion Canvas to call your API, pull in that information, so it doesn't have to sit forever and calculate it, and then parse the information to create any sort of animation that you want. So this is just the first little bit of how to make an API call. Like I said, in the next video, we will be expanding upon this to show one example of what we could do with this information. So thank you all for watching. If you've watched this far, it really means a lot to me. And until next time, I will catch you later.